All right, in John 6:63, Jesus says that the Spirit, it is the Spirit that gives life. And he'd already told them, you have to eat my flesh and drink my blood. And a whole bunch of them said, terrible, and they stopped being his disciples, right? So the Spirit gives life. The words that I speak are spirit. They're spirit words. So if we're teaching young children, grandchildren, or anybody that's coming along new to the church, we've got to lay on a heavy that, yes, we do, at Passover we eat a physical piece of bread, but it reminds us of spiritual things discerning the Lord's body. We drink a little bit of wine, but it reminds us spiritually of his shed blood. And we're going to carry that thought with us for 364 more days till next Passover. Unleavened bread, it's a spiritual thing. The whole thing was designed to be spiritual. And those who go, that's Old Testament, that's Jewish, that has nothing to do with me, are totally missing the picture. They're not getting the spiritual lesson, and they're not making spiritual progress, and they're not growing spiritually stronger. So we all know how to feed on turkey when it comes to Thanksgiving meal. We do it every year, most of us, right? We're getting pretty good at it, aren't we? Hey, are we good turkey eaters? We're good turkey eaters, right? Okay, so we know how to feed on turkey, but do we know how to feed on Jesus? Now, some do by reading their Bibles completely through in 12 months. But you could question those same people and say, John 3:13, what does that say? I don't know. It's close to John 3:16. Does that help? You know, no. Okay. The thief on the cross. What does that mean? What did you learn from the thief on the cross? Oh, yeah, he went to heaven with Jesus that day. It's like, you know, that most of the false, fake doctrines of the church are because people don't read carefully. They don't discern what the Scripture actually says. So just reading your Bible at high speed in a year is not enough. You have to actively read the Bible and totally comprehend what it's saying. And we've got 2 billion people, most of whom are going to be out on Sunday morning watching the sunrise, and they are totally misunderstanding the plan, and they don't know the Jesus, the true Jesus in heaven, who considers the sunrise service an abomination. And you know, I heard the other day that somebody got a Bible thrown at them because they said something that disagreed with the person's faith. And it's like, so if you want a Bible thrown at you, put it in somebody's face, especially a really good Christian, and you say to them, you know those sunrise services, yeah, they're an abomination to Jesus Christ. And then duck, because here comes the Bible. You know, watch out. So they misunderstand the plan of salvation, which is why when they die, guess where they go? They go where Jesus said they were going to go. They're going into the grave, right? And they're going to wait in the grave, like all the other dead people are waiting in the grave, and they'll either come up in the first resurrection or they'll come up in the second resurrection, right? Now, the first resurrection is going to be heavenly, because you're going to get a heavenly body. But you won't be in heaven. You'll be down here with Jesus fixing up this mess that Jesus is about to inherit on planet Earth. If you're misunderstanding the plan of salvation, then you wait in the grave until the second resurrection. And when you come up, it'll still be kind of heavenly in that you're going to meet Jesus on the first day. That's kind of heavenly, right? I'm going to be with Jesus. Yeah. And with blood and bones, and you're starting all over again is what you're doing, you know. Well, why? Because you got it wrong the first time and you pay attention. Okay, babies are fed by others, but pretty soon they learn to feed themselves, right? And then, you know, for what, 98% of your life, God willing, you feed yourself. That becomes your responsibility. And even the children that are being fed, you try to put some peas in their mouth and they throw them across the room. It's like, don't want that, no, you know, and they spill it on the floor. But after they learn, I want to eat this broccoli, yeah, right, okay, I want to eat these peas, they make the decision, they reach out for the food, they put it in their mouth instead of their ear, right, and they've learned how to feed themselves. So picture a farmhouse where the mother got a big turkey meal ready, and she yells out to the farm sons and daughters, come and eat and digest. She would never say that, right? She would say, come and eat. because God takes care of the digestion in most cases. Right? Now, nowadays we have young people who eat and then block the digestion system by, we don't want to go there, but essentially they stop the digesting process. If you never eat, right, you die. If you never get the food you did eat digested properly, you die. So I'm saying spiritual digestion is critical to the 2 billion people who are reading their Bible and loving Jesus and expecting to go to heaven, because they're not doing the spiritual digesting. It's like, well, we don't think about the physical digestion. No, most of us would be dead if we had to remember to breathe during the night. Right? You'd never get any sleep. You'd have to stay up all night. I got to keep breathing. I got to keep breathing. Oh, and then if we had to stay up all night and remind our heart to keep pumping, boom, boom, boom. God has done a whole bunch of automatic stuff for us. The digestion, under normal circumstances, done automatically. When it comes to spiritual, no, it's not done automatically. And the feeding is not done automatically either. So, what if a child comes to the table, looks at the food, says, I ain't eating that, right? And sits there and watch everybody else eat, and then leaves the table. And comes the next day, I'm not eating that. 3 weeks? The kid never eats. He's dead. So you got to eat the food, but you got to digest the food. Because if you're not digesting the food, you die, right? So we need to feed on true Bible knowledge. I love that we have on TV now fake news. I love that, because we have had fake theological teaching for 2,000 years, actually longer, because Jesus, before he died, he said, you Pharisees, you Sadducees, you've got fake theology. Right? He didn't use the word fake, but it works really well now, right? And so we got billions of people who are following fake theology instead of true Bible knowledge, right? And so, one, you have to feed on the right stuff. Unleavened bread is the right stuff for this boot camp period, right? Leavened bread is not the right stuff. That's sin. If you eat, and occasionally you'll hear stories of somebody brought a wedding cake from the weekend, and you're at your office, and they say, here, have a piece of wedding cake. And somebody was telling me the other day, I forget who it was. Anyhow, they were with a child, and the child was eating a sandwich, and the child just turned to grandpa and said, I can't eat this, you eat the rest of it. Put it in his mouth. and it's like he's just biting down on this squishy bread, Oh! Right? It was Jim, right? That was Jim's story. We got some of the best stories from Unleavened Bread that we don't get from the other festivals, right? And the angels and Jesus and the Father, they look at each other and go, this is a great festival. I love this festival, But it reminds us so easily we get tripped up, right? And it's the perfect analogy of if you're not carefully watching out for fake news and fake teaching, you trip into it. And when you do, it's not the end of the world. You just say, God, I sinned, forgive me. I wasn't watching close enough, You can always drive through a McDonald's and say, let me have a hamburger, hold the buns. See what you get, right? Okay, so we need to feed on true Bible knowledge, and then we need to digest it well, or, in other terms, gain solid understanding of the Jesus plan. And that's what's missing. The solid understanding of the Jesus plan is missing from 2 billion Jesus-following people. Otherwise, they wouldn't keep sunrise service, right? Okay, they read John 3:13, where Jesus says with his own lips, no man has ascended to heaven, and they think, yep, we go to heaven just like Jesus said. It's like, what part of English words do you not understand, right? How can that happen? It doesn't happen to us, right? But we've been trained. See, we've been trained that the comma in the thief on the cross, bad, right? Bad comma, right? Because it tilts the meaning of the sentence in the wrong direction, and it doesn't fit with other scriptures. So to them, they go, today you will be with me in paradise, based on the comma, right? And so we've learned, take the comma out, reread it. I'm telling you today, you're going to be with me in paradise. And before that, he said, when you come in your kingdom, remember me. And the answer to when you come in your kingdom, remember me was, I'm letting you know right now, when my kingdom does come, you will be with me in paradise, because you've got a repentant attitude, right? But people don't construe and understand, and they don't digest the knowledge. First, they're not even reading the knowledge properly, right? No man has ascended to heaven can't mean everybody goes to heaven when they die. It just can't mean that, right? And there's other scriptures where Jesus says people go into the grave. So Jesus repeatedly says, get the correct understanding, and thank God, you know, those of you who've had brain surgery, I need a brain transplant myself. But anyhow, you know, that the brain surgeons do understand what needs to be done. Don't cut that, do cut this, right? They have learned by practice to become very skilled at doing it. Now, I got my GPS. I brought my GPS. I switched from using a GPS to a cell phone. And the trouble is, when I drive away from a cell phone tower, I have no GPS. The nice thing about this GPS, it's always talking to the satellite, right? Now, if I'm inside a building, sometimes it says I can't find the satellite. So I go over near the window, and it finds the satellite, and I'm back in business. But you know, it works great, except when I don't press the right buttons. Right? Sometimes I punch in, take me to Mobile, Alabama. It says, okay, will do, away we go, right? When I get to Mobile, Alabama, I forget to reprogram it. So the next time I get back in the car, turn the engine on, it lights up, and I start driving to Mississippi, and it says, turn right. Like, what do you mean, turn right? I didn't turn on right, I'm going to Mississippi. Turn right, do a U-turn, go back to Mobile, Alabama, right? It's like, oh, I forgot to press the right button. So you have to, in biblical understanding, you have to press the right buttons. You have to get practice at pressing the right buttons. We are practiced at pressing the button that says, take the comma out of the thief on the cross. We are practiced at reading slow enough in John 3:13, no man has ascended into heaven. That means you don't go to heaven when you die. That's what that means. And then the other verses that say, when you die, you go into the grave. So where are people? They're in the grave. That's where they are. And so, Matthew 13:14. Hearing, you will hear and shall not understand. Seeing, you will see and not perceive. You won't get it. And people, you could see, they're not digesting their Bible knowledge. They're not looking at it closely and carefully, which is what we do during Unleavened Bread. We, you know, every now and then I've been places where people bring in a puffy, tall cake. And I go, ah! And the one who brought the cake in says, no leavening. How'd you do that? You know, and you ladies know clever ways of making cakes without leaven look puffy, you know, whatever. But anyhow, so he says, seeing you will see and not perceive. You're not getting it. You're not understanding it. And unleavened bread, the festival of unleavened bread is totally, you know, go out Sunday morning, and as they're coming back from the service, you know, with their clipboard say, excuse me, can you tell me what unleavened bread is? Huh? It's like, it's in the Bible. I never saw it in the Bible. I read my whole Bible in a year, every year. For 20 years I read my Bible. Right? Okay, Matthew 15:10. When he called the multitude to himself, he said to them, hear and understand. And that's a commandment from Jesus. It's a real short commandment. Listen closely and then understand. Now, what do you do if you don't understand? What do you do then? What? Ask questions. Why? So you can find out to understand, right? So, what the biggest, most important thing anybody coming into the knowledge of the truth can do is ask questions until they understand. Now, we go back to the real simple case of the comma in the thief on the cross. You know, first week in the church, they hear some crazy Australian like me or somebody say, that doesn't mean what you think it means, right? And they come up, and after church, they say, okay, wait, I don't understand what you said. I've always believed that you went to heaven when you die, you know. And I show them a couple of scriptures, and they go, oh. And they come back next week, and they come up to Jim, and they go, Jim, the comma's not supposed to be there, but it still reads like you go to heaven when you die. And you just keep asking questions, and you keep getting answers, and you keep compiling more true knowledge, right? None of this, trust me, I know what I'm talking about. It's in the book, right? And so eventually, you never have to talk to that person again about the comma and the thief on the cross, because they got it. They perceive it. They understand it. They've digested that little piece of truth, right? So he says, hear and understand, i.e. make the effort to understand. Now, most people don't want to make the effort to buy. I read my Bible completely through in 1 year. That's it. Do you understand it? Yeah, not all of it. But I'm going to heaven when I die. That's for sure. You know, I have faith, right? Okay. So in Matthew 16:11, he says, how is it that you do not understand that I didn't speak concerning bread, but to beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees? And you would track it down, that's hypocrisy and fake doctrine. So what the Pharisees were, to the vast population, the Pharisees were the most holy people on the planet. And they were teaching fake doctrine. And Jesus said, I'm the true bread of life. Pay attention to me. Don't pay attention to these fake guys with the false doctrine. Beware of their leavened doctrine. Leaven meaning mixture of bad doctrine mixed with good doctrine. Now, what would be wonderful if God had said way back when Adam came up, right? If God had said, like oil and water, is that right? You can't mix oil and water, is that what it is? Right. Okay. So if God had made a rule that false teaching and true teaching can never mix, like two magnets repelling each other, wouldn't that be wonderful? There'd be two choices. And in a couple of years, there's only going to be two choices. The two witnesses is going to be one choice, and the beast and the false prophet is going to be the other choice. They'll be on TV, and they'll both be doing miracles, and the beast and the false prophet will be doing happy miracles. Right? So most of the population say, they're the godly ones, right? And the two witnesses, they're going to be doing unhappy miracles. What? Famine. We don't like you. You know, it's like, listen up or you'll have some more famine, right? And so everybody's going to have a choice one way or the other, and most people are going to want to save their skin, so they'll choose the beast and the false prophet, right? But there'll still be a whole slew of people who know enough about their Bible, and I'll bet you at some point, they got 3.5 years, surely at some point in their 3.5 year ministry, they're going to explain the comma in the thief on the cross. Right? And people go, he just did a miracle. Wow, we better pay attention to what he said. Let me tell you about the thief on the cross. The comma doesn't belong there. Jesus said, no man has ascended to heaven. I never knew that. I have been lied to by my minister, by my priest, by the Father, all these years. Like we found out when we first started coming to the knowledge of the truth. But these guys are doing miracles. I listened and read Herbert, never did any public miracles. I worked for Ted Armstrong for 13 years, never did any public miracles. You start doing public miracles and people get impressed. And then they might listen to you, right? And so the two witnesses are going to have people listen to them and want to ask questions until they understand or they digest what it is they're eating spiritually, the feeding, right? So Jesus keeps on saying, make the effort to understand the truth. And what do we do during Unleavened Bread? We make the effort to avoid leaven food products coming into our house whenever it's all possible. My mother came over from Australia years and years ago, and my wife said, what are we going to do? And it's like, okay, Mother, this half of the kitchen, that's your property until you go back to Australia. This other half of the kitchen, that's our property. Over here, we're not having any leaven, donuts, whatever. What are you talking, leaven? I don't see leaven anywhere, you know. So we reached a compromise, and hopefully it was pleasing to God. We did the best we could under the circumstances. You know, you can't run your mother off, right? Anyhow, so Jesus keeps saying, you have to make the effort to understand. In Matthew 24:15, relative to the end time, he said, therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, then there's a little parenthetical statement at the end of that, where Jesus says, whoever's reading this verse, you read the Bible in a whole year, people, when you read this verse, let him understand. Yeah, let him understand. Yeah. Wait, what does that mean? It means, do you understand? Understand what? The abomination of desolation. Yeah, I've always wondered about that. What is that? When you read the abomination of desolation by Daniel, make the effort to understand. Well, I don't understand. Go read Daniel. Right? And read Daniel until you do understand. Make the effort to understand and digest the true meaning. And it's like, oh man, that's a lot of work. Yeah, labor for the food that lasts forever. Don't just be laboring for food that perishes. So understanding each truth makes us stronger in the Spirit. Every time we do unleavened bread and we learn a little more from unleavened bread, and then we carry it forward for 355 days into the future, that we are not to mix godliness with ungodliness. Wow, nobody would ever do that. 2 billion people are doing that, right? And more are coming, right? So, and then when the beast power gets going, it's like, we're going to make an image and you have to fall down and worship this image. Wait a minute, there's something in the Bible about doing that. In the 10 Commandments even. Don't craft an image and fall down and worship the image. Ah, but I am God. I changed that rule. No, you ain't God. I'm waiting for Jesus to come down riding on a white horse. So, understanding each truth makes us stronger in the Spirit, practicing unleavened bread first by obedience, then by physically eating unleavened bread, reminding us to be feeding on the mind of Christ, rejecting worldliness and leaven teaching and fake knowledge and fake teaching. During unleavened bread, we need to be seeking greater and greater understanding from this God-ordained practice. And then we will be digesting, understanding well, and growing stronger